Perfect. Okay, so the prompt for this week says, basically this week's focus on defining ethics as a group, exploring how ethics shape leadership and how ethics behave, ethical behaviors is reflected in public relationships. So define what ethics is, explore how it shapes leadership, and how like ethical behaviors are reflected in public leadership. So like how in general.
Okay. It's a little bit harder of a prompt, huh?
I mean kind of. So what do you guys like define ethics as? Like what do you think ethics is?
We give you like a couple examples in the book.
Yeah, they do.
It says like on this one little paragraph, it's like most ethical experts agree that like lying is wrong. So I think ethics is more like your morals and kind of like the norms that like we create as like a culture.
Yeah, like you like your like you said, like your morals, like you aren't gonna do something because of what you believe yourself.
Yeah, so like your culture. So say for example, like a president of the United States, like he knows like the people that he's speaking to, and like we all kind of have like brought up in this like have been brought up in like this culture where like certain things like you shouldn't do, so he wouldn't do certain things that way. I people would like him.
Yeah. Anyone else right now?
I agree. I think that your decisions are based on your moral principles. You know, you kind of act how you were raised and what you think is right or as close to right as possible.
Yeah. I think it definitely has a lot to do with how you were raised.
I like that in this chapter, a lot of the like little headers are like the challenge, like the
sorry.
Responsibility. Oh, sorry, bless you. Or like the challenge of loyalty. All those paragraphs were like really interesting to me because I think like acting ethical is like kind of hard sometimes. So I like that the book goes into like details of like certain areas that it could be hard in.
Yeah.
It's like it's perfect. Like it's hard to like act like you are perfect. Like those are really interesting.
Which one are you talking about? Which chapter? Or I mean, which paragraph?
The headers, like it's like from page 336.
336.
Yeah, it's like the first page, and it goes.
Oh yeah.
And all the headers, like they're all like they give you like different examples of like each of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like it talks about like the components of ethical behavior, which is like moral sensitivity, recognition, which I think is like super important because even if you are raised a certain way, like you believe certain things are right, I think a huge thing about ethics is also realizing that like your own ethics are not the only morals of like amongst people. I always get confused about the difference between like morality though and like ethics. Like what I mean, I feel like they're so similar.
I think they are really similar. I think morals are more like kind of just like I don't know. Like I don't know actually.
I've always kind of felt like morality was like more personal and then ethics was more general, like applicable to multiple different types of people.
A broad group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just pulled up the definition on the internet and it said that morality is a synonym for ethics, so I'm not sure that they're all that different.
I mean, I've definitely like been asked in my classes before, like what the difference between morals and ethics are, you know?
Yeah. So I feel like there is a difference, but I think it's subtle.
Yeah.
But let's see what else is in the prompt.
And then we need to talk about like exploring how ethics shape leadership. So I'm on page 340 right now. And says like how leaders respond to ethical questions surrounding the use of power will go a long way to determine like how them and their followers like connect, or like the relationship that they have with their followers.
And for this, let's like do our discussion post, and we had like pick like a non-ethical leader. So I chose to do The Devil Wears Prada, Miranda.
Yeah.
And like my like example of her was like she's like such a bad tone. Like she's so mean to like a lot of people. So I feel like the whole time like everyone working there is like you could like, I feel like if you're in it, you feel the like bad energy. So I feel like that gives like a really good example of like what it's like to work for like a non like ethical person.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think your moral standards, like you're not gonna like it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that like that's like a huge thing about like the quality of a good leader is someone with good ethics, because like if you're expecting your team to have good ethics or like good morals and then you're not, then you're a terrible leader, obviously. So I feel like it's a huge sign.
Yeah, but like the problem with that is like, in this thing I'm reading right now, it says that powerful leaders frequently protect their status by attacking those they view as a threat and justify their position by assuming that the powerless people aren't as qualified. So like I feel like that's like bad like leadership, and that's like having like bad ethics, I guess you could say. But like they're so powerful as leaders also that like there's nothing you can really do about it.
Ugh. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's like that would be like the worst situation to be in.
For sure.
What else?
Yeah, what else is the prompt say?
Well, it's just we just want to like, it just says explore how the ethics like shape leadership and how ethical behavior is related to public relationship or public leadership. So like,
well, I mean, like, I think you always want to talk about like Trump and that whole situation, because I feel like he was much more outspoken about, I mean, I'm not saying like I'm on either side, but he was much more outspoken about like personal beliefs or like certain things that could be viewed as unethical. And so he was like much more controversial versus like someone that maybe like doesn't talk about that same stuff, but he talks about like women's rights, like racism and things like that, in very like defining points, and that kind of split up people a lot more. So I feel like that's like a huge thing about ethics.
Yeah. And just like in general, like you already said, to be like a good leader, like I feel like people have to have good morals and good ethics, or like they're not good leaders because they're just using like their power for no good reasons.
Tear down the ones that aren't as powerful as them.
Yeah.
Like you were just saying.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you really do?
I think that like ethics is more of like a set rules that like everyone knows, or do you think it's more like a cultural thing? Like, do you think if like we act ethical, like say like in the United States and then go to like somewhere else, like do you think that like that they'll think we aren't ethical, like because we don't follow
You froze.
norms?
For sure.
I couldn't hear you. You froze for a second on my side.
She was just saying if ethics are like universal, or if like they can change by culture. Like if we were to go somewhere else, if they would think.
Oh, for sure. I think they can change.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like, because I mean, like every culture has their own like set of ideals and what's important to them. And so there really is no one standard. If we were to be like, oh, this is the ethics, and then go to another culture and be like, oh no, you need to be like this, then I think that's unethical.
Yeah. What do you think, Bill?
I agree. I don't think you can force your ethics on any other, community or anything like that. But that, and there lies the problem. If people can't agree on ethics in general, it's kind of the problem with, your leader. If he thinks he's doing the right thing, and you don't, now that's controversy. But on the flip side, if you know, he thinks he's doing the wrong thing, you know, it's a lot easier to rebel against him. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Other interesting facts were, well, did anyone like, I don't know if you guys saw like the challenge of conspiracy part. It's on 342.
Oh yeah. The consistency.
Where am I? Oh yeah, I don't know why I said that. Sorry. But just like the fact that leaders, where it says like leaders deal with their followers, relationships, situations, making it difficult to like stay consistent. I think that I kind of like talked about it in my leadership interview thing. My like the guy I interviewed said that like one of the most difficult things that he struggled with, like when he first became a manager when he was younger, was like making that consistent line of like friendships at work and like work, you know? So he was like, it wasn't always consistent. He's like, because I was so young that I was like, oh, I don't like this person, so I'm just gonna make them like do this. Or like something like that, you know? And then he was like, wait, I can't do that. Like I'm a manager, but like he was only 18. So he was like, and then I was like, oh, like that's really bad qualities, like like stuff like that. So I think like that the consistency of it's like it is like a hard thing to do. Like as a leader is to be consistent.
For sure.
Yeah, like I like the little example like on the bottom of that paragraph where it says like wrong is wrong no matter who does it or says it. But then again, like sometimes it is kind of hard to like always do the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, really think about it, like how like even if you're doing something wrong, you might like think like it's not that bad or something like that. So it's like we know wrong is wrong, but then sometimes like it is hard, you know.
Or if it's like someone that normally wouldn't do something wrong and then they do something wrong, you're like, it's fine. But then like the person that does keep showing up late and then does something wrong at work, then you're like, you just want to crack down harder. And that's harder because then like that shows preferential treatment.
Yeah. And like, I guess that's not like good ethics.
Guess not.
Components of ethical behavior. Moral sensitivity is like the first one on there.
Yeah, moral sensitivity. And then there's moral judgment.
I think the first one was kind of like most shocking to me. It's like, I mean,
What'd you say?
I feel like moral sensitivity was like the most shocking to me, like reading the components. Because I feel like the rest were kind of like obvious, like you have to have good judgment, good character, like those kinds of things. But then I was thinking like, I don't know, like not being sensitive, I guess, or like not recognizing people could be like unethical. Like I didn't even know that.
I didn't either.
Almost like the most like surprising to me.
It's just like, I mean, it's like at the same time, like it makes sense, but it doesn't. Like it pretty much says this component involves acknowledging that your behavior impacts other people. And like, we know that, how we act is gonna, like if we're gonna be rude to somebody or something, like it's gonna affect them also. But like, you don't really know the extent of it.
I guess my opinion is like kind of separating them, like that one being its own. Because like what you're describing to me, like when I would think about it, would kind of be like your character as a person, which like I remember before. So that's just like what I would think. Like when you ask me like components like being ethical, like I would think of all those things, but I don't know, the sensitivity one just kind of like threw me off.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, and especially since it talks about how like when you buy clothes, how you're thinking you're getting a good deal and then you're impacting the people in the sweatshop that are having to like make this, and that's why it's cheaper, something like that. Or like that's something you don't really think about that often, or maybe you just don't want to think about that often. Like kind of because you don't see it directly, like versus if you just are rude to someone, you see it immediately, like the impacts that you had. But when it's things like that, then it's just different.
One of the sentences that like I don't really understand, and like I read it a couple of times, was how it says like we can be victimized by moral tunnel vision when our mental scripts don't include ethical conditions, like consideration. Like, what does that mean?
It says that there. Where's it? It was like.
That was the same example you were talking about buying the clothes and you're thinking you're getting a good deal, but then you're not really considering the people that aren't making money. You're thinking of the clothes short-term deal.
Okay.
Bigger picture.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Or like, I feel like you can even say that with like making like a racist joke or something. If you don't consider like, you know, your mental scripts aren't thinking like, hey, where is it this could go or how could the impact is, you're like, oh, it's just a joke. Then,
okay. I was like, the like clothes one like made sense, but like not enough sense to me. So I was like kind of confused on it still. But that makes sense now.
Sure.
Moral judgment decided.
Did you guys go through the ethical perspectives?
Yeah, I was just looking at that, like the utilitarianism.
What page is that on?
349. And it like talks about how like utilitarianism is about like the best decisions are those that benefit the largest number of people or like generate the most benefits. So that's kind of interesting because I feel like that perspective can also be unethical in a way, because you almost forget about the individual. So if one person's getting hurt but like 100 people are getting okay, then it's like, which is ethical? Do you focus on the 100 people or do you just forget about the one person?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking when I was reading it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to do that because it's like you have to make a decision either way, right?
Yeah. I remember like, I think it was maybe my senior year of high school or something. We were talking about like ethics and stuff like that. And we had a speaker come in and she was like a drug, like whatever, like a drug pharmacist representative or something like that. And it was kind of like how they were talking about like drugs, about cancer and like having drugs to help like fight cancer or whatever. And she was saying how they had like a certain amount of the drugs, but there were so many people that wanted the drug. And she was like, she was like, I don't know, like it's hard for us to ethically like think like, do we just give it to 5 people or do we give it to no one? Like, is this person more important than this person is? And it was like, she was like explaining it, and I like, it was like a really like touching conversation, but it was really, it like made me think like when we're older and like in these jobs, you're gonna have so many decisions that like are gonna like test your morals and your ethics, you know?
For sure. Yeah, that's stuff that you don't even consider.
No.
But at the same time, it's like you do want to save those 5 people. So
yeah.
But
then like, how do you tell someone else that the other person's more important than them?
Yeah.
Even though that's not what you're saying, obviously, but like.
Yeah. You can't really determine who's more deserving of it or not.
Exactly.
Because no one is. They all deserve to have it, but you only have a limited. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right. That's like Steve Jobs getting a transplant, right? How did he get on that list so fast and all the way to the top?
It's like he's gonna get it because he has the money, but it's like that's not like, I feel like that's like not ethically right. Like you don't give it to the person with the most money.
Yeah, but that's always how it is. Everything's money driven, right?
Exactly. It's crazy. Are you guys all done? I mean, we're at 15, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have anything to add?
No, that's a pretty good combo. All right, do you want to turn it off?